It's my universe and I will dictate the reasonability. And nobody can tell me I can't have active aerodynamics. Does that look level? Yes, not crazy at all. You know, I used to try really hard at sports, but then I learned you can just buy trophies. What's up, people? We are back for the King Zero supercar build, and I'm really excited. So come here and look at this. I've got the big blueprint out that I did with the projector, basically from an old, shall we say, technical drawing of the original car. Then, of course, I scaled that up about 8.9%. And we're going to use that today and actually get some measurements off of it to make sure we're going the right direction with the Zero build on its chassis. So just come here, you can see kind of the wide picture of what's going on. Obviously, we got the BMW M70 V12 mounted to the Porsche transaxle. And in general, the rear suspension, the rear of the car stays basically the same. If you guys remember from last video, come on and take a little bit of a closer look. You can see that right here is where the big transverse bulkhead was of the Boxster chassis. Now there's a big V12 and not a puny flat 6, which would fit there. So that got cut, but we were able to basically extend and build the structure to support all of the weight of the V12 up here and the lateral in terms of the torsion and torque as well. We're going to put one more bar back here, a tie rod, which is a safety feature just for the engine so it can't move forwards or back. So we're doing really well, feel really good about that. And if you come on over here, I think you can get a view. We'll come on back over here so you can look from behind. Now, this is a very challenging build because the car is absurdly low. Even scaled up, basically 9–10%, it's still going to be less than 38 inches tall. That's 2 inches shorter than an original Ford GT40 and maybe an inch and a half taller than a Porsche 917, you know, from like the movie Le Mans with Steve McQueen and all. So what I've done on this is basically engineer the chassis so that we can bring in the air for the radiator, and the radiator actually gets mounted in the middle of the chassis, similar to my Omega car. And what that does is it does a double effect. If you come on over there and kind of back up as well as you can, you'll be able to see it. So there's some of the structure here left of the original Porsche Boxster. You can see this nice box section that we brought in further to by getting rid of what was the transmission tunnel. There's no transmission in there, but that's kind of what you call it from back in the old days. And then these rails here form another chassis rail that's going on down lower, which we were able to tie into round tubing, steel tubing here and here. Now, if you'll notice, I'll come over to your side, we have slightly offset the radiator to the left, and the fuel cell actually goes in on the right side. The battery, this is really nice. Everything's inside the wheelbase, so it's really good for the nature of engineering weight. So your battery goes there. And as a note, so this is a 12-gallon fuel cell. I didn't get crazy making a giant one or doing 2 of them, just because I didn't think I'd be driving this massively long distances. So that fits in there, and we've got hooks so straps can go over top. And for right now, for the sake of testing, before I go to the extent of actually making a, you know, like a metal tie down, which would be better in the case of fire and age and things like that, what we've got are ratchet straps. And made some nice hooks for them like this. And I know some of you are going to be like, that's a stupid idea, Casey. You can't do that for a multitude of reasons. And I'll be like, well, actually, I can for a multitude of reasons, and it works really well. So I'm not going to put this down all the way right now and waste the time because we got a lot of cool stuff to go over. And I'm going to cut the back off this car, which will be way more fun than watching me mess with ratchet straps. But anyway, I wanted to show you that. So this is going to ratchet strap down for the sake of testing. And honestly, if it works really well, I'm just going to go with it. But the downside using a ratchet strap like this is if there was a bunch of heat, it'll potentially melt and then you'll have a loose fuel cell. But if there's that much heat and fire, you'd be stopping anyway. And of course, age is an issue. So I'll make some metal hold down straps. It's going to be the same for the battery. Now, with regard to the radiator goes in right here. Use 2 L-bend pieces of steel that has a flange and has 4 holes drilled in it. This particular radiator I bought is a triple core, I believe, aluminum one from Jegs. It has furnace brazed cores, so it's not epoxied. So it should last really well, be really nice. This also has the radiator cap at the top, which is nice because if you're fortunate enough to be able to get the radiator in a place so this ends up being the top of your coolant system, then you don't have to run like a separate bottle, and you can just run a little recirc tank off of this here. So let me grab and show you. There's what I did find out that Jegs didn't tell me. It has these nice bungs that are welded in with threads. So it's really easy to mount it. Now, the reason that kind of annoyed me that they didn't tell me is I went and bought their universal mounting kit because I'm trying to save a little bit of time in fabricating something up. But then when I found these, I didn't need any kit. I can just make flanges and bolt it to it. So now I got to send the mounting kit back, which is kind of annoying. But anyway, so here's a radiator. And it's going to go in like this. Will it fit? Or am I an idiot? Can't we do both? Okay, so, and then of course I have these bolts, which goes through nicely pre-drilled holes, which actually Tyler helped me out with one day. That was nice. So let me just thread this in there real quick. Now I will tell you this, I'm just putting this in there for the sake of fitment and to show you guys. When I go to thread this in for real, so you got your radiator here, and you got a bolt that goes through it, through a piece of steel. Now, the hole in the piece of steel I drilled larger than the bolt is by a little bit. So if there's a slight flex in the chassis, you're not twisting your radiator. And also, so you got your bolt into your radiator and a flat piece of steel. There's going to be a piece of rubber here and a piece of rubber here so that it can move this way as well as this way. And you want to do that because obviously a radiator gets hot and cools down and expands and contracts, and the chassis can flex and stuff like that. None of those things are great to force a radiator into doing something and jamming it. So by giving yourself a little compliance with the nature of the holes and having rubber on either side, you can let the stress alleviate itself. It's kind of like bridges, like that you drive over in a car. They have joints that are expansion and contraction joints for the same reason. So this is where the radiator go. Obviously there's cardboard over it to protect the cores and the fins, which is really nice. There's a little bit of a leak here, so I'll probably do some sort of gasket here. And then the underside of this car, if you kind of look straight down, I talked about there's room that I could put quad turbos in here if I wanted to, and like 2 here and 2 over there. But for right now, I'm going to do it naturally aspirated because I love the sound of naturally aspirated. Anyway, the back of the car is going to get an underbelly and a pan. And that's going to allow me to channel the air underneath the car to then come up to a lower pressure into the radiator, because since the whole car behind the radiator and beside it will have a pan, then as it moves through the air, it'll create a low pressure in the outlets in the rear and up here as well to help the air flow through the radiator. Now, for where that isn't effective, and to be perfectly honest, there are some aspects of what's going on here, as well as the angle I had to do for the sake of the cabin and the structure. It's a little bit of a compromise, so it's not going to be ideal. But I got this sweet fan. It's a universal fan. You can buy these from any like aftermarket auto parts place that's good. It moves a lot of CFM and it fits well. So I'll be able to put this in here wherever it suits best for spatial constraints, probably over here. And it attaches to the radiator, goes through. We'll do that later. So I'll be able to move all the air I need to move in the world. That radiator is made for a racing, smaller, big block Chevy. So you could have something pumping 700-800 horsepower and cool it, such as our Corvette, through a tiny opening. So having this channeling well with a great fan will certainly cool this street-built BMW V12, which is built really nicely. So that's what's going on there. As another note, so the cap will go on here. And now that I look at it, I probably need to space that a bit so I can make sure I can get it in there from this flange well. This outlet for the radiator will come, if you want to look on the front side of the motor, will come to here. So I'll have to I'll probably have a little silicone tube, or rubber works fine. And then I will make a pipe that bends and comes to here. So it'll just simply do that. I want to keep it low so that this is the high point of the radiator. And then the one down here, if you can see it way down here, it points, unfortunately, directly at the air conditioning compressor. So this will have to be cut and angled more this way, and it'll come straight to this one. So this will bend and go around it, so it gives you plenty of room around the belts. You know, it's a relatively tight fit, but everything is work-onable, and every individual component can be removed, I believe, from the opening that will be in the future. Now, in all fairness and truth, I'll be able to get to the battery with the lid open for the engine deck, but it's going to be a pain in the butt. I will not be able to remove the fuel cell unless you take out the motor, which is annoying and stupid and not my normal way to do it. But let's be honest, I'm trying to harken back to the days of Italian design. And if we've learned anything from Italian design as being a mechanic, it sucks to work on Ferraris and Lamborghinis. They were designed to be fancy and overly complex, and all the owners have a bunch of money anyway to work on it. And the guys that were building it and engineering it did not care that you have to split a car in half just to change belts. So we're already doing better than that, but it's a good thing it's an aluminum and a metal fuel cell without a bladder, or it's not steel that'll potentially rust, because it's going to be in there a long time, because I'd prefer not to have to take this engine out for any reason for basically ever. The radiator, I might be able to finagle out, but that could be kind of a difficult thing too. So what we'll do is in the next one, we're going to measure the big drawing and seeing what's doable. Anyway, I want to move on, show you guys kind of the cockpit area and what's up with that. Now, so this is going to be a bit of the firewall. This also channels the air to the radiator. And what I've got here, now keep in mind, these are not the seats that are going to go in it. This is some junk I had laying around. I believe these are the back seats from a Volkswagen Corrado. Now this seat here, this backing, would actually go on the right side, but since it has this big poofy thing in the way, I'm putting it over there to get out of the way. But this will give you guys an illustration of just how tight the cockpit of this car will be. Now, the other thing about these are, this is not the right angle. You'll actually kind of recline even more. And the backing to this, shall we say, the seats, or where you sit, this will actually be thinner, and your butt will be scooted more forward. So let me show you a couple things. I guess this is all right. The steering rack's staying in as well as it wants to. Okay, here we go. Plop. Yes, yes. So I measured it, which actually we're going to need to do in a minute. So here we are. If you look straight ahead, come over and look straight ahead so you can see how this stuff fits. Now I'm going to make it so my butt sits maybe like a half inch lower than this, and my shoulder areas go back probably another inch and a half. So I'll be reclined a little bit more, kind of in this area. Oh, something's uncomfortable. And a lot of this structure, in fact, all this McPherson Tower stuff is going to be removed, and we're going to refabricate it. So actually my leg's going to be able to be over further, which is good, because if you look at where the steering rack is down here, we're going to use this joint that then can come to another one that has a high angle of movement like this. It's a double jointed U-joint. And the reason being is that steering rack right here will have to have two pivots right where the U-joint is. And what's going to happen is the steering wheel will be here, and the lid, or the windshield that is also your door, will be right here going over top. So to open it, you'll have to release something, and then you'll take the steering wheel and you'll shove the steering wheel forward like this to get out, which is your cue to also allows you to get out because the whole column moves forward. It's pretty neat, really. Now, the thing that I haven't looked into, and this is probably going to be a pain in the butt, this is the shifter out of the Boxster. Which obviously I kept because it matches the transaxle or transmission in the back. It already had a short shift kit in it that's kind of nice. I say kind of nice because the plastic Boxster is junk from Porsche. So it is what it is. Anyway, so this, what I'm going to do is, keep in mind I'm not going to use these mounts, but when I start forming the seating position, which actually will be a little bit bigger because it'll have thin padding, kind of like a race car, then I'll decide where will the position for this be. It'll be down a little bit, and it'll basically be between the legs of everybody. And it's going to be right about here, and literally this is where the shifter's going to be. It's kind of maniacal, but it's kind of sweet. So it's going to be right in that area, obviously, and then the shifter cables can go down and around. I'm going to have to get new shifter cables or special ones because the ones from the Boxster do not go that far, so that simply won't work at all. And then you can see the pedals I got. They're floor-mounted pedals, and I can't remember what I get, Willwood? No, Tilton. They seem to be the best value. And of course, it's got two master cylinders, one for the front, one for the rear, and an adjustable balance bar for your braking, which will be important on a car I'm changing. For people that worry about the weight balance, I think it's actually going to have fantastic weight distribution for a couple of reasons. One, every big thing or heavy thing is effectively between the wheelbase. And there's nothing beyond the wheelbase, outside of it, front or rear, that has virtually any weight. And it's just, I think it's going to have great weight distribution, honestly. I would wager to say it's going to be relatively close to 50-50. I'll say 45 front, 55 in the rear. That's my guess. So anyway, as a note, these pedals are gonna have to mount really low. And the steering rack I gotta reposition, but basically there's going to be a thin piece of metal that goes right next to the steering rack, right over top of it here, and is sloping downward. And it's basically just gonna be carpet at this point because your feet are gonna have to be there. This is literally where the pedals are gonna go. I'm trying to think if I got a little box to set them on or something around here. Yes, yes. So literally, the pedals are gonna mount virtually right here, right there. And then it's gonna have a gas pedal. And I might do a little bit of a divider, a little wall, so that the passenger can have their feet right here and not interfere with what you got going on, which would be pretty cool. And then obviously there'll be steel built in here and all around, so you have a nice flowing area and you're not exposed to everything down below. But that's kind of neat. That's the first time I've ever had my feet like resting on the steering rack. Pretty cool. Your feet will be basically right at the lead edge of the front tire. So in all fairness, these pedals are going to be more like out here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set these there approximately. Get back in and see if this is within the realm of reason. Even though we're already outside the realm of reason. Yes, it's my universe and I will dictate the reasonability. Hey, this is not bad. Yes. Now, I already did a little bit of measuring. Now, something that's interesting to me, these shock towers are going to move down approximately 1.5 inches, which is good because already in the seating position that I'm at, I can see past it. So if you're moving fast and you need to see an apex, you can hit it. If you're in a parking lot and you're not paying attention and you're a dingbat, you won't be able to see anything, you'll hate this car. And I'll be able to see out the side because there'll be a window here and a window here. So there'll be window edge going on right here. But in all fairness, there's gonna be a good blind spot, like right about here. And that might be what I'm gonna do is put a little monitor here with the camera pointing that way. So I've got a little extra something going on for where this blind spot is. It's gonna be a bigger one over here in some capacities. And then it'll have a periscope mirror or potential camera going on. I might actually do the old school mirror and periscope to look through the windshield and see that and see back, because if I do a camera in the back, then I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put a windshield. And frankly, the roof of this thing is gonna be right over your head. Like you could barely get a helmet on in it. So I think it's gonna work out. It's gonna have to have a tiny steering wheel. And I'm gonna make sure it's round because you're gonna need to be able to crank on it and you don't want it to be like a little D-shaped thing for like an Indy car because it's gonna be a manual rack. But let's do this. Let's go get the drawing out, which just fell on the ground because I think it cross breezed, and do a couple measurements, and we got to cut the rear. So the first measurement I want to do, actually first thing I'm going to do is close this window so I can look at the paper effectively. It's also hot as all get out in here, I got to be honest. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to get this out. Now this is the drawing that I did exactly to the scale I want to build the car. Now this is what the old internals look like of the teeny tiny prototype car way back when. And the reason I drew everything is not because I'm replicating it exactly, but because I want to see what they did. I want to see about how that fits or what they're figuring. So, and I scaled it up so that the wheelbase, bop, bop, matches the chassis I'm building exactly. The other thing that's really nicely is when it scales up, like if I measure the diameter of this tire, it's right about 23 3/4 inches. Which is awesome because what I chose, which is a used but nice tires and gaudy wheels off of like a Porsche Turbo, ends up being right at 24 inches. So like 1/4 inch bigger in diameter. So this actually matches up basically perfectly, as does the rear, as does the offset. So I was really fortunate there because Porsches have weird bolt patterns, 5x130, and nothing fits that. So I was fortunate to get something period that looks good with this basic design. Kind of a racy wheel with tires that are any good. So we're talking about height. So I'm gonna measure right here to the roof, at least where approximately this dude's helmet would be. And at the bottom of the chassis, as it's shown here, I would say is 34.5 inches, okay? Now I can potentially cheat with my chassis being a little bit lower, but the ground clearance is gonna end up being nil. So I'd say 34.5 inches, 34 to be safe, is all the room I've got from the bottom of the chassis to the top of your helmeted head. So what I'm gonna do is go sit in this thing and try to measure how tall little Jimmy is. Ooh, on his birthday. Okay, here we go. I've got a stick and a measuring tape. This is precise science, people. Yes! Okay, shut up, Casey. All right, how am I gonna do this? Okay, here we go. All right, so here's this. Sitting in, I'm driving. This is scary. Oh, hooray. Yes. Does that look level? Yes, not crazy at all. Oh, I am, it looks like it's about 31.5 inches, which, as we all know, gives me like 2.5 inches to spare. So I can totally wear a helmet and I'm totally gonna fit. If you're taller than me, you're gonna be uncomfortable and I don't care because it's my car. And if you're smaller than me, like my wife, then you'll fit. And I wonder how she'll like this car. We'll see. Okay, so we're good on height. Now the other thing I measured, I wanna show you guys approximately how far back this goes. What I use as kind of a base point is the vertical line of the wheel, okay? So when I want to measure, since I know the wheelbase is correct, when I want to measure where a point is on the longitudinal axis going forwards and back, then I go from a point there. So as an example, this point here is very important because this is basically our firewall or rear wall here. And I can't change this. I can't push it back further right now. This, I could lean back, so if your head has to be more here, we can do that. So what I'm gonna do is measure, approximately from this tube, if I can do it, to the center line of the tire here. And I'm right about 47.25 inches right there. Now, I'm doing that because if I come over here to the center line of the tire on the drawing, bang, there it is. Okay, this kind of curves, whatever. I'll have to curve with it. Okay. I said 47.5 inches. And if you guys look, that ends up being, do you want to look a little closer? Can you see this? I don't know if they can see it upside down. That ends up being 1 inch behind a helmeted head, which is perfect because that means what I did here with the angle I need to get the air up to the radiator, and this being the firewall, if I were to take this firewall aspect straight up to wherever the top of the roof line is of this car, I could still have 1 inch thick of high density padding, just like you would in a headrest of a race car, and wear a helmet and still fit in this thing perfectly fine, scaled up. Which is actually kind of good, the whole thing's scaled up. And you might say, Casey, you scaled up the driving, you already scaled up the driver. I'm 6 foot, 6'1". I think I'm probably about 8.9 to 10% taller than the guys in Italy were in 1970, because people get taller. Like, do you ever think about that? If like George Washington like came by, or like Jesus Christ came walking by, they'd be like, what's up, George? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how tall these people were. Okay, but I don't think they're that tall. And I'm digressing. Where am I going? Let's cut it in half. Yes, that's what I want to do. All right, so now this we can't screw up because you're supposed to like measure twice and cut once. I don't care if you measure twice, but you should at least not screw it up. So check this out. We're gonna go to the back of the car. You know somebody's gonna get mad at me for inferring that Jesus is smaller than, not as tall as people are nowadays. The camera guy is not saying a word. Smart man, smart man. Okay, let's see here. So the rear tire, on this one, I've got the other drawing, but these doggone drawings are so big, we can't even get them out on the walls in here. So I'm gonna have to do the best I can. So here's the tire, approximately 25.5. So I'm gonna go from here, find out the top of the tire is approximately here as the car sits. Now the reason I'm doing that is because right straight in the middle, I need a point to come back to know approximately to where the coach building on the original car would be. So from this point, I see, and you might want to come over here to the front. I see that here's the topmost point in the back, and here's this, and it curves around slightly. That we're looking at 21 inches conservatively, up and down is where the body ends here. So if we got 21 inches to there, so let's go do this. Let's find and guess approximately where the rear deck, which is this here, and this would have been the inside of the rear trunk of the Boxster. And we left it on, there's some structural rails here. It's not doing anything important of the last foot here. So I think I said 21 inches from the center line going straight up and down. Now this tire is going to come up in the wheel well, I'm gonna say 2.5 inches, maybe 2.25. So what I'm gonna do is, let me remember how I'm gonna do this. Okay, so we're gonna go from 2.5 inches up, about here, and 21 inches over. And that is approximately where the center was. Now that's pretty high, that's up here. Which is saying it's right about here is the end of the bodywork. Now the bottom of the bodywork, it slopes down and in. So, now to be fair, we already measured this and drew a line on it. And if you come down to the bottom, come down low and let's look at the structure here of the Boxster. We got the transaxle here. On the original prototype, the transaxle they use, which obviously is different, you can see clearly, nearly matches up with the back of the bodywork. So you can see that really well. There's this probably extruded aluminum and bent piece of tubing here, or bar, that connects in the lower pan, which bolts solidly to these suspension points and helps create structure. So there's some value to keeping this here. There's also some nice studs on it. Or there were. Oh, they're over here now. Okay, whatever. So there's some studs. You could help use this to hang in exhaust, or if you're putting in Venturis down here, you can utilize this. But this is where the rear bumper section would have bolted into the Boxster. So where I'm going with this, basically anything from this bar aft can be cut off. So, and they're going to have to add to this, and they'll probably get shaved a lot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to look at the side of it. If you come over the side, laterally here. Here's the bar right here. And what we've done is we've already drawn a line right here, this marker line across, and it's approximately 3/4 inch aft of where that aluminum bar is and everything mounts. But the other thing nicely it does is it still keeps this ribbing intact right here. So that's a great place to cut it to where we'll be able to integrate well and hopefully still use the steel of what used to be the Boxster trunk. Without cutting it. And if we had to blend, like weld to the end of it and blend flat sheet metal, it would be much easier to do because you're going across in a flatter area. So that's one of those things you want to look ahead in terms of the execution of actually doing the build afterward. Let's cut! So I'm going to start with this finer blade. Yes, yes. Now there is a bracket here. I think I'm going to knock this bracket off real quick. Goodbye. Just go full throttle. You got to leave time for the blade to actually cut into the metal. So the harder the metal, you got to go slower. So all right, I'm gonna bring it to here and stop just so I can visualize it since I can't see it and make sure I'm not gonna screw up and cut into something I wanted. It's easy to do that. So I'm going to do it about a 45 right here. And it's going to take a moment. Casey, you sawed your transaxle in half. You're dumb. Yes, yes, yes. That's brilliant. Okay, so now I just got sheet metal to go through, but it is coming close to the transaxle. So I'm going to go to a real shallow angle, and I'll bring it up a little higher. Maybe you want to come around to the back and look. And this way I should be able to keep it closer to the line here. How am I doing? Oh, that is darn close, isn't it? I'm going to come out a little bit. Yes. You know, this is kind of reminds me of the joke. It's like, oh, I have to build my own supercar and it's painstaking and difficult and everything like that, and people at Cars and Coffee just go out and buy their own supercars, which is the great analogy to that like one-liner joke. It's like, you know, I used to try really hard at sports, but then I learned you can just buy trophies, which is kind of the same thing, don't you think? Oh, yes. Take your paddle shifting and suck it. Yes, this is how you build supercars. So that we have accomplished three things. One, we've made it lighter, which makes it faster, and it looks sweet, and you can access it more. Is that three things? Is that four things? Yeah, but the fourth one wasn't on purpose. It's a good side effect. Hooray! Okay, so supercars. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Okay, so now the good things here are, the reason I wanted to go back a little bit, if you look inside here, there's this post, rather thick steel, that is welded up here, and that's what this bolt threads into. There's also this rather thicker piece of steel, which strengthens this whole area and creates a hard point. By coming out, I knew that if there would be things on the inside, which frankly I didn't know what it looked like, I've never seen the inside of this, you got to give yourself a little leeway so when you cut it, you don't hit it. If I would have shaved it closer, we would have cut that and that would have been annoying. But from here, I can very easily, with say 14 gauge sheet metal, cut out this, what is this, hexagonal? Yes, hexagonal shape, and fill it just like that, no problem. And then I can utilize this for mounts or whatever needs be. Also, from the sheet metal here, if this needs to be trimmed a little bit, I can easily weld sheet metal to this and blend into the body lines that are going on. Obviously, I got better access. I got to clean up the transaxle and everything here. And for all you guys that are excited and wonder where this build is going, I'll tell you this. So the original Stratos Zero concept is pretty cool, but the aerodynamics of it suck. The ergonomics are kind of psychotic, but they work, and it's a spindly little engine. This is not a spindly little engine, and we're fixing the aerodynamics by getting the radiator flow here. I also wanted all of the weight in between the wheelbase. On the original one, I believe they put the radiators in the back, which sort of works, but it's not ideal. And the way they had the triangular upper, engine lid here and design cue oriented, that was to draw air in, which is already coming from the top going on a downslope. So it's just doing nothing but creating lift and turbulence. I'm doing it the other way. I'm bringing air from the bottom that can go through the radiator, and it can go past the motor and all, somewhat out the top, but largely out the back. But what I've done is leave room to create a big venturi under the back. So we can have venturies coming out to actually create genuine downforce, and I can put a splitter up here with an air dam going on because the nose of the original Zero raises up a little bit. So it has an air dam and a splitter, then I can decide how much air I want to flow underneath this car or channel to the radiator. But largely because it's fun, I do have this old racing wing left over. This is from like a Le Mans prototype. It's a single element. It's made out of aluminum, just the way you make experimental airplanes and such. It's got a single mounting point in the rear, and what up? Will be oh so legit, hanging about a foot off the rear and very low from the Stratos Zero. So one of the big things I'm going to do, just because I'm a racer, I like to have fun. This car is going to get super extreme because this is not only going to be drivable on the street, it's basically going to have the full track aero package as well from the front to the rear. So I'll be blending the old school coach building methods of hand building your body out of metal, hand forming it there, hand forming the whole car, but it's also going to get modern day aero, which will utilize things that are typical airplanes like this design, which is aluminum sheet metal with flush rivets over ribs, but some of this will be carbon fiber as well. So it's going to look really pretty. Hope you guys are excited. But the other fun thing about it is too, because of the nature of the way the mounts are, there's no reason why I can't have this pivot on hefty bearings right there on the center of pressure, which is generally, I don't know, about 15–20% back from the leading edge of the wing. So you have it pivot on the center of pressure, and then I can have a lever on the left side of the cockpit, and I can change my angle. Because this is the real world and not some silly sanctioning body, and nobody can tell me I can't have active aerodynamics or adjustable from the cockpit, so I'm gonna. And I don't care if you don't like it. What else do I got going on with this thing? That's about it, you guys. But I hope you're enjoying the build, and I hope it inspires you to do something. Remember, if you start a big project, you have to be able to finish it. So, it's like all those memes you see about like the heart and the brain. The heart's like, I bought a new car, yay, I feel great. And brain's like, we don't need another car. What are you doing? It's like, okay, I'll sell it. And then the brain's like, good. And then we can go on to projects, and the heart's like, I bought another car, yay. And that's sort of like the problem. So make sure you can finish the project. I'm in my late 30s and just now got to a point in life where I've got a little area to work and the basic tools and the time to actually be able to dedicate something like this. So hope you guys are enjoying it, and more Casey's 80s garage is coming up because I bought another 944. Yes. So hope you guys come back. See you next time.